That night, I hid in the cold basement, holding my breath, listening to my stepmother's heels stomp across the floorboards. She didn't know I'd turned on the voice recorder on my smartwatch. She also didn't know the person knocking at 11:04 p.m. was my grandfather, who the family thought had withdrawn years ago. When the lock clicked, everything they built for a decade started collapsing with just 3 questions from him. I realized he wasn't absent. He was testing us. My name is Riley Ashbourne. I am 27 years old. In my professional life, I am a senior compliance investigator for Kestrel Integrity Lab. It is a sterile name for a job that requires a sterile mind. I spend my days under the flat, humming fluorescent lights of a downtown office building, sifting through digital mountains of data. I hunt for the anomalies people try to bury, the cleverly worded clauses in shadow contracts, the fractional discrepancies in expense reports, the email chains that establish intent. My talent is not brilliance, it is patience. I can stare at a spreadsheet until the numbers bleed together, and when they refocus, the lie I'm looking for is usually staring back at me. At Kestrel, I am respected. I am precise, analytical, and detached. I find the truth. At 5 p.m., I drive 40 minutes home to the suburbs of Greyhaven, Colorado, and that version of me ceases to exist. Home is a meticulously maintained 2-story brick house on a quiet cul-de-sac. Greyhaven prides itself on its pristine lawns, its identical mailboxes, and its silent, simmering anxieties. Our house is a pressure cooker, and the only escape valve is the basement. For me, the basement is not a room. It is a sanctuary. It's unfinished, with cinder block walls that smell of cold concrete and earth, and a floor smooth from a century of being. The only light comes from a single bare bulb and the small green status lights on the furnace. It is filled with the ghosts of our family's previous lives. Furniture draped in white sheets, stacks of old books, a defunct exercise bike, but it is quiet. The thick foundation dampens the world. The constant, low hum of the water heater is a white noise that blankets the sharp edges of my pain and the sharper edges of my stepmother's voice. Down here, I am not a problem to be managed. I am just a person in a quiet space. The architect of the pressure upstairs is Vivian Cross. Vivian married my father, Evan Ashbourne, 12 years ago. 2 years after my mother died of a sudden aneurysm, Vivian arrived with a flawless smile, an impeccable wardrobe, and an ironclad organizational system. She is the chief operating officer of the Ashbourne household, and she runs it with a smiling, suffocating efficiency. Her control is absolute, and it is always disguised as care. She manages the finances. She holds every password to every account, from the mortgage to the utilities to my father's retirement funds, all stored in a digital vault only she can access. The heavy fireproof safe in her master bedroom closet, which supposedly holds our vital documents, is a black box I have never seen open. Her justification is always the same, delivered with a sigh of practiced martyrdom. Your father just hates paperwork, or, Riley, you're just too sensitive to handle the stress of finances. She controls the schedule. Our shared Google Calendar is a mosaic of obligations she curates, color-coded and mandatory. She controls the environment, the thermostat, the grocery list, the very flow of conversation. My father, Evan, is her willing subject. He is a gentleman, a master carpenter who spends his days in his detached workshop, sanding exotic woods and creating beautiful, intricate things while the infrastructure of his own family slowly rots. He is fundamentally conflict avoidant. He mistakes Vivian's control for strength. She just wants what's best for us. Riles, he will murmur, not looking up from a piece of dovetail pine. It's just easier to let her handle the details. He has chosen peace over partnership. He has ceded the territory of our lives, and by extension, my defense. The Ashbourne name used to mean something here. My grandfather, Harlan Ashbourne, was a phantom of Colorado real estate. He was a legend, a man who saw empires in empty plains and had the leverage to build them. He was sharp, demanding, and the only person who ever saw my meticulousness as a strength rather than a symptom. Then, 10 years ago, around the time Vivian's signature appeared on the joint bank accounts, Harlan vanished. The narrative, carefully crafted by Vivian and passively accepted by my father, is that Harlan, grieving and eccentric, had a breakdown. He liquidated his assets. Vivian would explain to curious friends at holiday parties, her voice dripping with pity. He just wanted to travel, to be free of the burden. The implication was clear. We were the burden, he was gone. No calls, no letters, just a void where a patriarch used to be. My sensitivity is not a personality flaw, it is a diagnosis. 5 years ago, a cement truck ran a red light. I woke up in a hospital with 3 fractured ribs, a concussion, and a nervous system that had been permanently scrambled. The official label is Complex Regional Pain Syndrome, or CRPS. It is chronic, invisible, and utterly exhausting. On good days, it is a low-level static, a stiffness in my joints. On bad days, my skin feels like it is being scorched, and the sound of a closing door can send a jolt of pure agony through my body. It is unpredictable. Because it is invisible, Vivian treats it as imaginary. You seemed fine this morning, she will say, skepticism lacing her tone, when I have to lie down in a dark room. Are you sure you aren't just anxious, Riley? You tend to make things into a crisis. To our relatives, she paints me as a tragic hypochondriac, a fragile burden. She just cries to get out of helping, I overheard her tell my aunt. She uses it for attention. Her dismissal is its own kind of pain, but my job taught me one thing. If it is not documented, it did not happen. So I document everything. On my personal, encrypted laptop, I maintain a series of spreadsheets, symptom log timestamped, XLSX, medical expenses itemized, PDF, physical therapy progress. Notes, JPG. I track my pain on a scale of 1 to 10, correlated against the weather, the food I ate, and the household stress level, which is a polite metric for the volume of Vivian's voice. This is not a diary, it is a legal defense for my own existence. The power structure in our house is a corporation where Vivian is the CEO and sole shareholder. My father is a silent board member. I am an unpaid, problematic intern. Communication is not dialogue. It is a series of directives and emotional pressures. When Vivian wants something, she applies leverage. The budget is very tight this quarter. Riley, she'll say. We really cannot afford that new specialist and the HOA dues. She forces a choice, my health or the family's stability. Tonight, the barometer was dropping, and so was I. A storm was rolling in from the Rockies, and the changing pressure sent knives into my hips. The rain started just after dinner, a cold, miserable downpour hammering against the windows. Upstairs, the tension was thick enough to taste. Vivian was at the dining room table, her laptop open, the sharp click-clack of her typing a counter-rhythm to the rain. My father was ostensibly reading the paper, but he had not turned a page in 10 minutes. "Evan," Vivian said. Her voice was quiet, which is always more dangerous than when it is loud. "We need to discuss the third quarter projections." "Viv, can it wait?" "No, it is Riley's medicals. They are up 12% from last year. 12%. It is simply unsustainable. We are hemorrhaging money." "What do you want me to do?" my father asked, his voice weary, already defeated. "We need to explore options," she said. "More aggressive management of her care, or perhaps she needs to contribute more if she is well enough to work at that lab." My stomach clenched. The pain in my hips sharpened into a spike. Contribute more. I was already paying rent, transferring a set amount to their account on the 1st of every month. She meant more. I could not listen. I could not be in that room. I stood up, the legs of my chair scraping softly on the hardwood. Vivian's eyes met mine, cold and assessing. I did not say a word. I turned and walked to the basement door. I pulled the heavy door shut, the click of the latch sealing me in. The darkness was immediate, broken only by the dim green status light on the furnace. I sat on an old trunk, breathing in the cool, earthy air. The rain was a dull thump, thump, thump against the foundation. The fight upstairs was muffled, just indistinct rumbles of her sharp tone and his low concession. I closed my eyes, focusing on the pain, trying to breathe around it. I was down there for maybe an hour, lost in that meditative state of endurance, when the sound cut through the concrete. Knock, knock, knock. It was not the sound that startled me. It was the feel. It was heavy, insistent, on the front door, vibrating through the house's very frame. It was late, after 11 p.m. No one ever came to our house this late. I heard Vivian's annoyed sigh from the kitchen above me. Who on earth? Then, through the tiny sliver of a basement window that faced the front yard, I saw it. The front porch light flashed. Flash, pause, flash, flash. My blood turned to ice water. It was a signal, a game, a code. I am here. Are you ready? It was the code my grandfather, Harlan Ashbourne, used when he would pick me up for secret fishing trips. 20 years ago, a code he invented just for me. A code no one else knew. The knock from the previous night had been a false alarm, just a delivery driver confused about an address. But the tension it left behind was a physical weight in the house. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick and damp. I found Vivian in the kitchen the next morning. She was wiping down an already pristine granite countertop, her movements sharp and aggressive. "Riley," she said, not looking up, "we need to talk about last night." I braced myself, leaning against the doorframe, my hip already aching. "What about it?" "Your behavior," she finally turned, her eyes narrowed. "Your theatrics, the crying, it was too loud. It upsets your father." "I was in the basement," I said, my voice quiet. "I was in pain. Vivian, the storm, the barometer. It is always something." She dismissed my reality with a wave of her hand. "It is an excuse. Your emotions are unregulated, and frankly, they are becoming a liability to the harmony of this home." I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, the defensive anger that I knew, if I unleashed it, would only prove her point. I swallowed it. "What do you want, Vivian?" She walked over to the kitchen island and picked up a single sheet of paper. She held it out to me. "I want a commitment." I took it. It was not a legal document, not yet. It was a typed-up page, a bizarre corporate-style behavioral contract, an agreement of emotional management. It stipulated that I would agree to utilize provided coping mechanisms before resorting to disruptive emotional displays, and adhere to a mutually agreed-upon communication protocol regarding pain levels. It was insane. It was a document demanding I stop feeling where she could see it. "In exchange for continued residency," she added, her voice smooth, "we need to know you are taking this seriously." I stared at the paper. Continued residency. She was threatening to evict me from my own father's house, framing it as a wellness plan. "I am not signing this," I said. "Think about it," she replied, turning back to the counter. "It is for your own good. We are all very worried about your stability." The word stability hit me like a stone. I needed to print a physical therapy referral form. I went to the small office alcove off the living room, where the family printer sat. The output tray was not empty. Someone, likely Vivian, had printed something and forgotten it. My hand hovered over the papers. It was a stack of 3, stapled. The top page was dense with legal terminology. I picked it up. My breath caught. Durable power of attorney. It was a draft, a template filled in with my father's name. Evan Ashbourne as the principal and Vivian Cross Ashbourne as the agent. It was sweeping. It granted her immediate power over all financial decisions, all property, all banking, and chillingly, all healthcare decisions. Should he be deemed incapable of making his own? It was unsigned, a draft, but it was ready. It was waiting for a moment of weakness, a moment of leverage, a signature. My pain, which had been a dull ache, began to sharpen into spikes. Stress. The trigger was always stress. I looked at the document, and then at the shared family Google Calendar open on the desktop screen. I scanned the week, color-coded blocks for Vivian's Pilates, my father's workshop deliveries, my physical therapy appointments, and then I saw it, this Friday, a 2-hour block. Meeting, E&V, charity consultants. I had never heard of a charity. I had never heard of a consultant. It was an event I was clearly not invited to. The pain was becoming a fire, climbing up my spine. I went back to the kitchen. The POA draft folded in my hand. Vivian was gone. I walked past the stairs, past the door to my room, and went straight to the basement. I locked the door behind me. I sat on the cold concrete floor, leaning against a stack of old National Geographics. The air was cool, smelling of ozone and dust. I focused on my breathing, riding the crest of the agony, waiting for it to subside from a 10 to a 7. When I could move my fingers without shaking, I pulled out my phone. The compliance investigator took over. I laid the POA draft flat on the floor and took clear, high-resolution photographs of every page, ensuring the metadata, the time, the location, was embedded in the file. I saved them to a new, encrypted folder in my personal cloud drive. Folder name, Project Kestrel. I accessed the Google Calendar and screenshotted the charity consultant entry. Saved. I opened my meticulous symptom log. I created a new tab. Incident log timestamped. I entered the date and time, 10:17 a.m. Vivian presented emotional management agreement. Stipulated residency contingent on signature, 10:24 a.m. Discovered DPOA draft on printer. Vivian Cross as agent. Evan Ashbourne as principal, unsigned, 10:25 a.m. Discovered calendar entry for charity consultant meeting. I was building a case. I just did not know what it was for yet. Later that afternoon, I found my father in his workshop, the air sweet with the smell of sawdust. He was sanding a piece of walnut, his movements rhythmic, practiced, a retreat. "Dad?" He flinched, not having heard me approach. "Hey, Riles, you okay? Viv said you two had a chat." "She wants me to sign a behavioral contract," I said bluntly. He winced, not looking up from the wood. "She is just worried. You know how she is. She likes structure. She is trying to kick me out." "She is not," he said, too quickly. We are under a lot of pressure." "What pressure?" I asked. "I pay rent. My medicals are covered by my own insurance. What pressure?" "It is this new investment," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Vivian is restructuring some of the old family funds. It is complicated." "What family funds?" I asked. The Ashbourne money, the scraps of what Grandpa Harlan had supposedly left, was a black box. Vivian managed it. "Just funds. Riley, it is for the best. She is trying to protect our future." "Is that what the charity is?" He froze. His eyes met mine, wide with a flicker of panic, before he quickly looked away. "I cannot talk about this right now. I will explain it all later. I promise." Later. The word of a man who means never. I left him in his cloud of sawdust. He was not an ally. He was a hostage who had befriended his captor. My suspicion was now a living thing, a restructuring of family funds that I was excluded from, a power of attorney to silence my father, a behavioral contract to legally brand me as unstable. Vivian was not just controlling me, she was building a narrative. It was the same narrative she used at every family gathering, every holiday. "Poor Riley," she would say to my aunts, her voice oozing synthetic pity. "She is just such a financial burden. The medical costs are astronomical. We just want her to get better, but she seems to thrive on the attention." I was not a person to her. I was a financial burden. And if I was a burden, then any action taken against me could be justified as fiscally responsible. I needed more data. The next day, I was leaving for work when I saw our neighbor, May Whitlock, retrieving her mail. May was in her 70s, sharp as a tack, and missed nothing on our block. "Riley, dear," she called out, waving a bundle of letters. You are looking thin? Just busy, May. I smiled. Well, I wish I had your energy. I see all the deliveries your stepmother gets. Goodness, she must be starting a new business. My smile tightened. Oh? Oh, yes, every day. A new truck, that sleek black one, net-a-porter, and sacks, and those blue boxes from Tiffany's, big ones, little ones. I tell my husband, Tom, I say, Tom, Vivian Cross must be the most fashionable woman in all of Greyhaven. I thanked her and got in my car, net-a-porter, Tiffany's, all while she was complaining that my 12% increase in physical therapy copays was hemorrhaging money. The lie was not just big, it was arrogant. That night, I did something I had never done. I waited until 1 a.m. I put on dark clothes and gloves. I went outside to the side of the house and carefully, silently, lifted the lid on our recycling bin. I did not know what I was looking for, but my job taught me that people are careless with their trash. I sorted through Amazon boxes, junk mail, and seltzer cans, and then I found it. Tucked inside a crumpled Vogue magazine, it was an envelope, not from a store, but from an accounting firm. It was a confirmation of receipt for a quarterly tax filing. It was addressed to the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation, at our home address. Care, the word mocked me. She was using my pain, my need for care, as the brand for her new slush fund. I photographed the envelope. I put everything back, exactly as I had found it. Back in the basement, my new war room. I dug deeper. I had the name of the foundation. I had the name of the accounting firm. I did not have access to their bank accounts, but I had access to mine. I logged into my personal bank account. I looked at the rent checks I'd been sending, digitally, to the Ashbourne household joint account for the past 3 years. The transfer was automatic, on the 1st of every month. But 6 months ago, the routing had changed. Vivian had sent me a polite email. Riley, our bank is updating its systems. Please use this new account number for your monthly contribution. Thanks. I had done it without thinking. Now, I looked at the account. It was not the joint checking account. It was a new account at a small, local credit union, Greyhaven Trust. The account name was not Ashbourne Household. It was Cross Advisory Services. My blood ran cold. It was an intermediary account, a shell. I tracked the money. My rent went in, and steady, small transfers went out. $500 here, $200 there. Little, insignificant amounts, flowing like a leaky faucet, all heading to the same final destination, a high-yield investment account under the sole name of Vivian Cross. She was not just siphoning money from my father, she was stealing directly from me. She was building her defense. I was unstable, the contract. She was consolidating her power, the POA. She was hiding the assets, the luxury goods. She was creating a legal vehicle, the foundation, and she was funding it with my own money, Cross Advisory. I sat in the dark, the green light of the furnace blinking. The pain in my body was a raging fire, but my mind was ice cold. The instinct was to run upstairs, to throw the bank statements in her face, to scream at my father. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that was what she wanted. It would be my word against hers. And she had already written the script where I was the hysterical, unstable daughter. I would lose. No, I am a compliance investigator. I do not act on emotion. I act on evidence. I would not confront her. I would not say a word. I would stay silent. And I would let her believe I was weak, emotional, and blind. I would let her build her case. And all the while, I would be building mine. I heard the front door open above me, a rush of cold, wet air flooding the entryway. I remained frozen on the basement steps, hidden in the shadows. Vivian's voice cut through the night, high and brittle. My goodness! What on earth are you, Harlan? Is that really you? My father's voice was a confused mumble. Harlan, what's going on? It's after 11. It is, a third voice said. It was low, dry, and steeped in an authority I had not heard in a decade. It's 11:04, to be precise. Hello, Evan, Vivian. I crept up the steps until my eyes were level with the foyer floor. I could see them. My grandfather, Harlan Ashbourne, stood on the welcome mat. He was not the diminished old man Vivian had described. His silver hair and beard were neatly trimmed. He wore a dark, expensive-looking trench coat, beaded with rain, and his eyes, sharp and clear, were taking in every detail of the foyer. The expensive silk wallpaper, the new crystal chandelier. He looked solid, immovable, and completely in control. A small, knowing smile played on his lips. "Harlan, you must be freezing!" Vivian rushed forward, all performative hospitality, grabbing at his arm. "Evan, get him a towel. Why on earth didn't you call? We were worried sick you were, we were worried." "You seem to have managed," Harlan said, his gaze sweeping past her. He looked right at the basement door, right at me. He did not smile, but his eyes acknowledged me. He knew I was there. Then he looked back at my father and Vivian. "It is late," he said, "so I will be brief. I was in town, and I have a few things I need clarified." "Clarified?" Vivian's laugh was a nervous tick. "Harlan, it's the middle of the night. Surely this can wait until morning." "First," he said, ignoring her, his voice cutting cleanly through her protest, "who manages the money in this house?" My father shifted, looking at his feet. Vivian's spine stiffened. She placed a proprietary hand on my father's arm. "I do," she said, her voice like smooth steel. "As you know, Evan has always hated the details. I handle the investments and the household budget. It's just simpler that way." Harlan nodded slowly, as if ticking a box on a mental checklist. "Good. Second, what is the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation?" The air in the foyer turned to glass. My father looked at Vivian, his brow furrowed. "The what?" He did not even know the full name. Vivian's smile did not flicker, but it became a mask. She recovered in an instant. "It is a small philanthropic project we started," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured compassion. "To give back to the community, we are focusing on supporting local families dealing with the burden of chronic illness." She made a vague, delicate gesture in my direction, a silent, damning implication. She was using me as her origin story, right in front of the one man who might see through it. Harlan's gaze flicked to me. I stepped out of the shadow and walked into the foyer light. "Riley," he said. His voice was level. "My third question is for you. Do you still keep your health journals?" It was a test, a signal, sent across 10 years of silence. He was asking me if I had the data. "Yes, Grandpa," I said. My voice was clear, and it did not shake. "I keep very detailed logs, symptoms, expenses, copays, timelines, everything." I watched Vivian. I was the only one looking at her. Her head tilted, her eyes narrowing as she recalculated the threat level. She had always dismissed my logs as the hysterical diary of a hypochondriac, not as evidence, not as a data set. Her upper lip gave the smallest, involuntary twitch. She realized her mistake. "Thank you, Riley," Harlan said. He turned back to Vivian. "That's all for tonight. I'm tired from the drive. I will just take the couch in the living room. We can talk more in the morning." This, more than the questions, seemed to throw Vivian into a panic, a guest she could not control, sleeping in the heart of her territory. "The couch? Harlan, that is ridiculous. It is not prepared. Let me get the guest room ready." "The couch is fine," he said. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact. "I have slept on far worse." My father, finally finding a task, scurried to the linen closet to get a pillow and blanket, pointedly avoiding Vivian's murderous glare. As my father fumbled with a fitted sheet, Harlan looked at me again. It was a long, steady gaze. It was not the look of a grandfather greeting his granddaughter. It was the look of an auditor who has just found a trusted insider. It was appraisal. It was confirmation. He knew I had seen something. He just did not know how much. I nodded once, a tiny movement, and retreated to the basement. This was no longer my sanctuary. It was my war room. I waited. I listened to the house settle. I heard the muffled, furious whispers from the master bedroom upstairs. Vivian's voice, sharp and high. How dare he, after 10 years, just show up, questioning me? My father's low, conciliatory rumble. The click of their bedroom door. The house was quiet by midnight. I waited another hour, the adrenaline burning off, leaving the cold, clear logic of my profession. At 1:30 in the morning, I heard the softest, most deliberate creak on the basement stairs. The door opened. Harlan did not turn on the bare bulb. He used the small flashlight on his phone, a tight, white beam in the darkness. He found me on the old trunk, my laptop open and waiting. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his voice a low rumble that did not carry. "This was always your spot when the noise upstairs got too much." "Hello, Grandpa," I whispered. He sat on an overturned crate opposite me. "What have you got? Riley?" No small talk, no apologies for the lost decade, just the work. I turned the laptop to face him. The screen illuminated his face, all sharp angles and deep shadows. "I don't know what you know," I said, "but this is what I know. I call it Project Kestrel." I did not give him the raw data. I gave him the analysis, the way I would for a board of directors. I started building this file 4 days ago. First, the legal framework. I opened the high-resolution photo of the durable power of attorney. It's a draft, unsigned. It grants Vivian total control over my father's finances and, more importantly, his medical decisions, upon incapacitation. Second, the narrative. I showed him the emotional management agreement she tried to force me to sign. She is building a legal case that I am emotionally unstable, a liability. She's justifying my pain as hysteria, contingent on my continued residency. Third, the motive. I opened the file of receipts and invoices, the ones from the recycling bin, and the notes from my conversation with May Whitlock. She's spending, lavishly, luxury goods, all while claiming my physical therapy copays are a financial burden. Fourth, the mechanism. I showed him the photo of the tax filing for the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. And finally, I said, opening my master spreadsheet, the engine. I showed him the flowchart I had made, a map of the money. She's been diverting my rent money. She had me send it to this account. Cross Advisory Services, a shell at a local credit union. From there, she siphons it, in small, regular, untraceable amounts, into this personal, high-yield investment account under her sole name. I sat back, my hands folded. She is stealing directly from me. I am certain she is stealing from my father. And she is using the foundation as a front, leveraging my illness as the brand to do it. Harlan was silent for a very long time. He stared at the screen, his finger tracing the lines of my flowchart, from my checking account to her investment fund. He finally looked up, and for the first time, he smiled. A genuine, thin-lipped smile of approval. "Kestrel Integrity Lab," he said, testing the name. "It's a good name. Your job suits you. Riley, it suits numbers and the truth. You always did hate disorganized facts." He leaned back, the crate groaning under his weight. "You have built a perfect cage," he said. "Now we just have to get the animal to walk into it." "What do we do?" I asked. "I have the proof." "No," he said, holding up a hand. "You have the outline. Proof requires intent, and it requires a public admission. Right now, this is just paperwork. If you confront her, she will shred it, delete the accounts, and paint you as a vindictive, unstable daughter. And your father will believe her, because he needs to." He was right. "So we let her continue," he said. "We let her think she is winning. She is arrogant. She thinks you are fragile, and she thinks your father is a fool. She is right on one count. We will let her overplay her hand. Tomorrow, we will open a few windows, let some light in." He stood up and went back to the living room. I stayed in the basement, but the air was different. It was charged. I was no longer just hiding. I was planning. I activated the full cloud sync for the Kestrel folder. I went into my banking app and set immediate push notifications for any transaction, in or out, from the Cross Advisory account. As I was saving the new settings, I heard the floorboards creak again. Not Harlan. This was Light. Anxious pacing. Vivian. She was in the kitchen, directly above me. I held my breath. I could hear her voice, a furious, sibilant whisper. She was on the phone. No, he just showed up, out of nowhere. I don't know what he wants. He's being cryptic. Yes, of course it is still on for Saturday. It has to be. The donors are all confirmed. We just have to move up the timeline. I don't care. Just make sure the media kit is ready. No, this is a performance. It is about perception. We secure the pledges Saturday, and the rest is just paperwork. Do not worry. I will handle Harlan. A performance. The fundraising performance for the charity consultant. She was not just shuffling my money. She was actively soliciting more. Harlan's arrival had spooked her, and she was accelerating her plan. I heard her hang up and pace back to the bedroom. The adrenaline was burning through me, but it was a clean, cold fuel. The pain in my hips had receded, replaced by a sharp, focused clarity. The basement door opened again. It was Harlan. He must have heard her, too. She is moving, I whispered. The fundraiser is this Saturday. I heard, he said. That's good. Arrogance under pressure makes for sloppy mistakes. He reached into the pocket of his heavy trench coat. He pulled out a key. It was not a house key. It was old, cast iron, and heavy. The head of it was fashioned into an intricate sigil, an interlocking A, the Ashbourne family crest. He held it out to me. It was cold in my palm. What is this? This house has layers, Riley, he said, his voice low. Vivian only knows about the ones she painted over. You have been hiding in the public basement. He tapped the key against my laptop screen. It is time to open the real basement. Harlan waited until he heard the soft click of the master bedroom door closing upstairs, followed by the sound of the shower running. Vivian's morning routine. It was 6:15 a.m. He nodded at me, and I led him from the living room back down into the basement. The bare bulb overhead felt insufficient, casting weak yellow light on the damp concrete walls. The house was built in 1930, Harlan said, his voice low. The original owner was a bootlegger. He understood the value of hidden spaces. He walked past the furnace, past the trunk I always sat on, to the far wall. There, a cheap, particle-board wine rack had been bolted to the cinder blocks, probably by my father. It held a dozen bottles of dusty, unremarkable red wine that Vivian kept for unexpected guests. Help me with this, Harlan said. We did not move the rack. He pointed to the top, near the ceiling. The panel. Look closer. I ran my fingers along the top edge of the wooden paneling behind the rack. My fingers brushed against a small, recessed hole, almost invisible in the dim light. A keyhole. It was set into a seam in the wood that I had mistaken for a simple plank join. I pulled the heavy iron key from my pocket. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. I inserted the key. It required real force to turn, the mechanism stiff from disuse. There was a deep, satisfying thunk of a heavy bolt retracting. The entire wine rack and the 8-foot section of wood paneling it was attached to swung smoothly outward on hidden hinges, revealing a dark, narrow opening. A different smell hit me immediately. Not the damp earth and ozone of the main basement. This was dry, sharp, and clean, the scent of old, high-quality paper, leather bindings, and cold steel. Harlan used his phone's flashlight again, illuminating a short, narrow passage that ended in a heavy bank vault-style steel door. He entered a code on a digital keypad I had not seen, and the door hissed open. This was not a room, it was a vault. It was perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, climate-controlled, lined with gray metal filing cabinets, and organized with the obsessive precision I recognized in myself. This was Harlan's mind, rendered in steel. He built this to survive a fire, Harlan said, flicking on a bright, sterile overhead light. Or an audit? He walked to a cabinet labeled Estate Primary. Vivian and Evan know this room exists. They think it is just for old tax returns and property deeds. They never had the key, and they never bothered to ask for the code. He pulled out a thick, leather-bound binder, the Ashbourne Living Trust, amended and restated. He placed it on a small metal desk in the center of the room. He flipped through the pages, past the legalese, past the schedules of assets, until he reached a section titled Beneficiary Designations. There was my father, Evan Ashbourne, listed as the primary beneficiary, and then, beneath it, Conditional Contingent Beneficiary, Riley Ashbourne. "What is the condition?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Harlan tapped the clause. I leaned in to read the words he had written 10 years ago. "The contingent beneficiary shall inherit control only upon demonstrating, to the satisfaction of the trustees, sound and independent judgment. This includes the verified ability to resist undue influence, emotional manipulation, or character assassination intended to obscure financial truths." I had to read it twice. This was not a trust. It was a test, a decade-long, brutal entrance exam. He had seen Vivian coming. Even then, he had predicted her exact strategy: emotional manipulation, character assassination, and made my inheritance contingent on my ability to survive it. "You knew," I said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "I knew her," Harlan corrected. He opened another drawer. This one labeled Correspondence Evan Unsent. He pulled out a single sheet of his old, heavy cream-colored letterhead. It was a draft of a letter, dated 6 months after my father's marriage to Vivian. "Evan," it read, "you are confusing passivity with peace. You are inviting a fox into the henhouse because you do not want to listen to the chickens squawking. Her ambition is a fire, and you are letting it burn down your defenses. One by one, you must set boundaries. You must protect your assets, and you must protect your daughter. She is using your grief as a ladder. Wake up." It was unsigned, never sent. "Why didn't you send it?" I asked, the words catching in my throat. "Because he would have shown it to her," Harlan said simply, as if stating the obvious. "And she would have convinced him it was the ramblings of a jealous old man. He had to learn for himself, or you had to learn for him." He closed the drawer. "But this vault is not just my history. She has been using it too, or trying to." He pointed to a small, new, cardboard banker's box sitting on the floor. Tucked in a corner, it was labeled, in Vivian's flawless script, CACF Drafts, Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. She thought this was a secure, fireproof place to store her preliminary work, Harlan said, a thin, cold smile playing on his lips. She did not know I had the master code to the keypad. I knelt and opened the box. It was her entire plan, in draft form: bylaws, articles of incorporation, memos to the PR freelancer. My eyes landed on an old, printed screenshot of an email chain. It was from just before the wedding. It was Vivian, communicating with someone in public relations. "The key," Vivian had written, "is to frame my integration as a stabilizing force. Evan is the grieving artist, impractical. Riley is the sensitive, fragile child. I am the competent, healing presence. We need to build this personal brand strategy before we are married. It is the narrative that will control all future financial conversations." She was not just a thief, she was an architect. I dug deeper, pulling out the draft of the foundation's bylaws. As a compliance investigator, I read documents like this every day. I know the language. I know where the traps are hidden. I found it in Article 9, Administrative and Governance Costs. "Grandpa, look at this." I pointed to the clause. "The foundation is permitted to reimburse reasonable governance costs, including consulting fees, administrative salaries, and marketing, up to a ceiling of 35% of all donated revenue." Harlan frowned. "Is that high?" "High?" I almost laughed. "It is criminal. The standard for a legitimate charity is 15%, maybe 20% if they are heavy on logistics. 35% is not a charity. It is a laundering mechanism. It is a legal license to pay herself or her shell companies more than a third of every dollar she raises, all under the guise of management fees. And suddenly my flowchart made perfect, terrifying sense. We left the vault, locked the panel, and returned to the main basement, the binder with the trust and the box of Vivian's drafts in my hands. The sky outside the small window was turning a pale, sickly gray. I spread the documents out on the floor. Next to my laptop, the puzzle pieces were all there. "It is a triangle," I said, thinking aloud, my investigator brain taking over. "The money has 3 destinations. First, there is the existing Ashbourne Trust. You still control that?" "Sealed tight," he confirmed. "Second, there is this new entity, the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. She built it as a public-facing vehicle to solicit new money from outsiders, using my illness as the bait. The bylaws are designed to let her legally skim 35% off the top." "And third," Harlan said, pointing to my laptop screen, "there is your shell company, Cross Advisory." "Exactly." I drew the lines in my notebook. "She is attacking on 3 fronts. She uses my rent money to fund her personal accounts directly. She uses the foundation to solicit public money she can steal from, and—" I looked at the POA draft. "She is trying to get her hands on my father's signature to gain control of the real money, your trust, or whatever else he has left, under the guise of managing his affairs." I looked at him. This is not just opportunistic. This is a long-term, meticulously planned operation to disinherit my father and legally disenfranchise me. I sat back, my hands covered in the dust from the vault. I finally understood the scope of it. "I am going to stop her," I said. "I have the jurisdiction. I can take this to the State Attorney General's office, the Charitable Trusts Division. I can flag the IRS. We have the bylaws. We have the bank transfers. It is a clean case." "No," Harlan said, his voice firm. "Not yet. You do that. It is a quiet investigation. It will be tied up in litigation for years. She will claim it is a clerical error, a misunderstanding. She will use your father's money to hire lawyers who will bury you in paperwork. She will paint you as the vindictive one." "So what do we do?" "We let her have her party," he said. "This fundraiser on Saturday. She called it a performance. She is right. She is staging a public event to solicit funds based on a fraudulent premise. We will use that. We will use her own stage to expose the mechanism, in front of her donors, her friends, and the local press she invited." "A public audit?" "A public reckoning," he corrected. "She wants to control the narrative. We will provide the facts. Let us see which one is stronger." I was silent for a moment, processing the risk, the sheer, naked aggression of it, but he was right. A private investigation gave her time to hide, to spin, to manipulate my father. A public exposure would cauterize the wound. "Okay," I said. "We use the fundraiser." I looked at this man, this stranger who was my grandfather. He had abandoned us. He had left me and my father to be consumed by this woman, all as some kind of test. The pain of that abandonment was a cold, hard knot in my chest. But I did not have time for that. "I have one condition," I said, my voice as cold and steady as his. "What is it?" "My father. He is not part of this. He is weak, and he is a coward. But he is not malicious. He is her victim, too. When this happens, all the blame, all the legal exposure, must land on her. He must be protected. He must be seen as the victim he is." Harlan watched me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing the cost. "He chose his blindness, Riley," Harlan said softly. "He will have to live with the consequences of his passivity." "I do not care," I said. "He is your son, and he is my father. You left him with her. This is your price. You protect him from the shrapnel." Harlan nodded. A slow, deliberate movement. "You drive a hard bargain, but you are right. He is an Ashbourne. He will be protected. The target is Vivian, and only Vivian. We had less than 48 hours. The fundraiser was Saturday night. The house, which had been a quiet pressure cooker, instantly transformed into a frantic, chaotic production studio. Vivian was electric, a whirlwind of nervous energy, making calls, directing deliveries, and barking orders. The air crackled with her ambition and her anxiety. Harlan, to his credit, played his part perfectly. He was the picture of the prodigal patriarch, returned from the wilderness. He sat in the living room, observing, asking my father gentle questions about his woodworking, and politely declining Vivian's every attempt to settle him or figure out his plans. His presence was a quiet, immovable object that was driving Vivian insane. I, in turn, reverted to my role. The quiet, pained, invisible daughter. I stayed in my room, or in the basement, ostensibly managing my symptoms. Vivian was relieved. The last thing she needed was her crying burden underfoot while she prepared for her masterpiece. She dismissed me, and in doing so, she gave me the one thing I needed: space. My work began on Thursday morning. First, I established our own surveillance. While Vivian was upstairs on a conference call with the caterer, I went to the kitchen. It was the nerve center of the house. I took a small, voice-activated digital recorder, no bigger than my thumb, from my old college supplies, and taped it securely to the underside of the granite overhang on the kitchen island. It was a public space, the area with the least expectation of privacy in the entire house. It would capture every frantic phone call, every order, every whispered financial conversation. Second, I attacked the foundation. I used a public library computer during my lunch break. I created a new, anonymous email address under the persona of a wealthy, elderly widow from Denver, Helen B. Vance. I sent an email to the public-facing address listed on the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation website, a cheap template site she must have put up recently. My email was polite, interested, and dangled the ultimate bait. Dear Ms. Cross, I wrote, I was recently made aware of your new foundation's noble mission. As a survivor of a chronic pain condition myself, I am deeply moved and am considering making a substantial, six-figure contribution from my late husband's estate. As part of my family office's standard due diligence, could you please provide me with a copy of your full bylaws, your IRS 501c3, determination letter, and a list of your current board of directors? I look forward to hearing from you. The trap was set. She now had a choice: ignore a massive, six-figure donor, which her greed would never allow, or send fraudulent, unfiled, or incomplete documents to a stranger, committing wire fraud in the process. Third, I went after the bank. I left work early and drove to the Greyhaven Trust Credit Union, the small local bank where she had cross-advisory services. I walked in and asked to speak to the branch manager. I presented my driver's license and my own bank statements, showing the automatic monthly transfers from my account to hers. I am here, I said to the manager, a harried-looking man named Mr. Phelps, because I believe I am a victim of fraud. That got his attention. I have been making these rent payments to what I was told was a household account, I explained, my voice steady, my demeanor that of a confused but professional client. But I have reason to believe this account, Cross-Advisory Services, is not what it was represented to be. I never authorized my money to be used for a private business. Phelps looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I cannot discuss the specifics of another client's account. Privacy laws. I am not asking for her balances. I cut him off, my voice sharp. I am asking for the documentation regarding my money. I am asking to see the original signature card for this account. I need to know who the authorized signatories are on an account that I'm funding. I have a right to know where my payments are going. He disappeared for 10 minutes. When he returned, his face was pale. He had clearly seen the name Ashbourne in his system, and the name Cross, and smelled a local scandal he wanted no part of. Ms. Ashbourne, he said, sitting down. This is a simple sole proprietorship. It is not a household account. The only authorized signatory, the sole owner, is Ms. Vivian Cross. Your transfers are listed as recurring deposits from a client. So I am a client? According to this paperwork, yes. Thank you. Mr. Phelps, I need a certified copy of my transfer history to this account for the last 12 months. Just my deposits. Nothing else. For my records. For the fraud report I will be filing. He complied immediately, eager to get me out of his office. I walked out with a notarized stack of statements proving, unequivocally, that I had personally funded her shell company for a full year. That evening, Harlan made his move. He took a walk and returned 3 hours later. He met me in the real basement, the vault. It is done, he said. I reconnected with an old friend, Alistair Graves. He is the senior partner at Solara Audit. I knew the name. Solara was a bulldog. They were the most feared independent auditing firm in the state. Alistair was very interested, Harlan continued, in the bylaws for a new charity that allows a 35% administrative fee. He found it ambitious. He has agreed to send a junior field agent to the fundraiser on Saturday, unannounced. A random audit, I said. A spontaneous integrity check, he called it. Harlan smiled. They will arrive just as the checks are being written. Now it was my turn to secure our eyes. I went next door to May Whitlock's house, carrying a plate of cookies I had bought at the store. May, I said, sitting in her immaculate, lavender-scented living room, I need your help, and I need your discretion. She put down her teacup, her sharp eyes missing nothing. I thought you might, dear. You have that look your grandfather gets when he is about to buy a building out from under someone. I told her everything. The foundation, the shell company, the luxury goods, the 35%. I did not show her the documents, but I gave her the facts. Her face, normally so cheerful, hardened. She is using your pain, May said, her voice flat. She is monetizing your illness. That is not just theft, Riley. That is grotesque. She is having a fundraiser on Saturday. She is inviting the press. She is going to use me as a prop. I need someone on the inside, someone she will not suspect. What do you need me to do? I already asked her if you could come, I said. As a volunteer photographer, I told her you were a hobbyist and wanted to help. May's expression brightened instantly. Oh, that is clever, dear. She will be so busy being the star. She will never think to look at the nice old lady with the camera. I need you to photograph everything, I said, my voice low. The guests, the speeches, but most of all, May, I need you to get close to the donation table. I need high-resolution images of the checks as they come in. I need photos of the cash envelopes. I need to be able to cross-reference what is given with what is reported. A physical audit trail, May said, her eyes gleaming. Consider it done. My new camera has an excellent zoom lens. The pressure in the house was mounting. My father, caught between his newly returned father and his agitated wife, was beginning to crack. He found Vivian in the kitchen on Friday morning, while she was berating the florist over the phone about the color of the lilies. I was in the living room, within earshot of the recorder. Vivian, stop, Evan said, his voice low and shaky. Stop, Evan. Do you see what I am dealing with? They sent ivory instead of cream. The entire color palette is ruined. I mean, stop everything, he said. This fundraiser, it is too much. It is too fast. And with Harlan here, it just feels wrong. It feels conspicuous. Can we not just postpone it? Vivian slammed the phone down. The silence was violent. Postpone, she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. Postpone? After I have confirmed the caterer, the MC, and the Greyhaven Gazette? Absolutely not. But Viv, do you know what this is? Evan? This is about our reputation, our standing. Your father's presence is not a problem. It is an asset. It shows family and legacy. People will donate more because he is here. This is not just a party. It is a strategic move. Your reputation points are all we have. Do not be weak. Not now. He did not say another word. He retreated to his workshop. the sound of his electric sander a high-pitched, desperate whine. That night, Friday, I finalized the package. In the vault, I assembled my case. I scanned the notarized bank statements from Greyhaven Trust. I scanned the draft bylaws from Vivian's box. I created the final damning flowchart, a clean corporate-style graphic, Riley Ashbourne Rent, Cross Advisory Services, V. Cross Sole Prop, Vivian Cross Personal Investment Fund. I put it all in a single, encrypted file, Project Kestrel Full Disclosure, zip. I attached it to a new, drafted email. The recipient was the public intake address for the Colorado Attorney General's Office, Division of Charitable Trusts. This was Plan B. If Harlan's public spectacle failed, if Vivian managed to spin the narrative, if something went wrong, I would walk out of that party, and before my head hit the pillow, I would hit send. Harlan and I had one last meeting. "I have made a decision," he announced, standing by the living room window, watching Vivian's hired MC direct the setup of a garish, floor-to-ceiling vinyl backdrop. It was a soft focus photo of a much younger, healthier me, laughing with Vivian. The slogan beneath it read, "The Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation, Healing Our Future." I felt sick. "I will be making a surprise donation," Harlan said, his voice cold. "I will wait until she has made her speech. Then I will stand. I will announce my return to Greyhaven, and I will pledge $50,000 to her worthy cause." "You are going to give her money?" "I am going to pledge it, contingent on one small thing, a public, real-time matching of the books. I will announce that my auditors from Solara are here to verify the miracle of her work before I sign the check. I will challenge every other donor in the room to demand the same transparency. We will publicize the transparency, as I will call it." It was a perfect corporate ambush. She could not refuse $50,000. But if she accepted it, she triggered the audit, right in front of her donors and the press. The house was ready. The trap was set. Vivian, high on the adrenaline of her own performance, walked past me as I sat on the stairs, observing the chaos. She adjusted the cuff on her silk blouse, her eyes scanning the floral arrangements. "Riley," she said, her voice sharp, "tomorrow night, I need you to look presentable. No tears, no drama. You are the face of this. After all, I need you to be composed. Just sit, smile, and look grateful." I looked up at her, my face a mask of weary compliance. "Of course, Vivian. Whatever you need." She smiled, satisfied. She saw the fragile, emotional, defeated girl she had created. She had no idea that her greatest liability was not my sensitivity, but my precision. The leverage was not my weakness. It was her absolute, blinding assumption of it. The house ceased to be a home at precisely 6 p.m. It became a stage. Caterers in stiff black vests moved with silent efficiency, transforming the open-plan living and dining rooms into a single, flowing reception space. The ivory lilies, the ones Vivian had screamed about, were everywhere, their scent thick and cloying, mixing with the sharp, acidic smell of champagne and the aroma of saffron-dusted appetizers. The hired MC, a man with a suspiciously dark tan and a microphone turned up too loud, played soft, generic jazz over the speakers. Vivian was in her element. She stood near the vinyl backdrop, the soft focus, 10-foot-tall photograph of her and me. She was wearing a severe, emerald green silk sheath dress that I knew, from a quick search, cost more than 3 months of my salary. Her hair was swept up. Her makeup was flawless. She was the very vision of compassionate, wealthy control. Her smile was bright, practiced, and absolutely terrifyingly false. The guests began to file in. These were not friends. They were an audience. I saw Dr. Alistair Finch, the head of the local hospital board, a man whose donation would lend legitimacy. I saw a state assemblyman, Paul Taggart, already schmoozing, his laugh too loud, and I saw her, the lifestyle reporter from the Greyhaven Gazette, a young, ambitious woman named Tara Lynn, her phone already out, taking pictures of the decor. This was the crowd Vivian had cultivated. I was not part of the party, as instructed. I was a shadow. My station was the kitchen, just behind the swinging door that led to the dining area. It gave me a perfect view of the podium, but kept me invisible. I had a single, wireless earbud in, tucked under my hair, piping in the audio feed from the recorder I had hidden under the kitchen island, where Vivian had established her command center with the head caterer. My phone was gripped tightly in my left hand, the screen dark but unlocked. My thumb hovered over the icon for my encrypted banking app. I watched Harlan arrive. He had not been announced. He simply appeared, walking in through the front door, still wearing his dark trench coat, as if he were a neighbor dropping by to borrow sugar. Vivian, who was laughing with the assemblyman, faltered. Her smile froze for a single, critical second before she composed herself and rushed over. "Harlan, you made it. Oh, let me take your coat. You must be—" "I will keep it," Harlan said, his voice flat and quiet, cutting her off. He did not look at the other guests. He bypassed her completely, walked to the front row of chairs that had been set up, and sat down in the one directly facing the podium. He pulled the small, leather-bound notebook and a pen from his breast pocket. He opened it to a clean page and sat, silent and observant. He was an auditor in the pews. To everyone else, he was just an anonymous, slightly imposing old man. I scanned the room for my other ally. I found her, May Whitlock, wearing a bright pink cardigan over a floral dress, her large hobbyist camera dangling from a strap around her neck. She was perfect. She was blending into the wallpaper, smiling sweetly at guests, adjusting her glasses. She looked like a harmless, dotty old woman, completely beneath Vivian's notice. She was already snapping pictures, her lens aimed not at the guests, but at the donation table, a delicate antique desk manned by one of Vivian's friends. At 7:30, the MC stepped up and the jazz music faded. "And now," his voice boomed, "please put your hands together for the visionary founder of the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation, a woman whose compassion is matched only by her profound strength, Vivian Cross Ashbourne." Vivian took the podium. The room was silent. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling with perfectly modulated emotion. "Thank you all so much for coming." She placed a hand over her heart. "When we are faced with pain, with a struggle that seems insurmountable, we have two choices. We can collapse under the weight of it, or we can build." She gestured, almost imperceptibly, to the smiling picture of me behind her. "My family, our family, we have known that struggle. We have faced the daily, invisible battle of chronic pain. We have seen how it can ravage not just a body, but a spirit, how it can isolate, how it can deplete, how it can create a crisis." I stood in the darkness of the kitchen, watching her perform. She was magnificent, in the most terrible way. She was selling them a story of healing, of teaching resilience, of a mother who had heroically turned her family's private agony into a public, charitable good. "We built this foundation," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "to ensure that no family, no individual, has to face that battle alone. We are here to provide comfort, resources, and hope." As she spoke, my eyes flicked to May. May was not watching the speech. She was watching a late arrival, a local developer named Marcus Thorne, who was shaking Vivian's hand after the speech, pressing a thick white envelope into her palm. I saw Vivian smile, nod, and, in a single, fluid motion, slip the envelope not into the locked, clear acrylic donation box on the table, but into the pocket of her own designer handbag, which was hidden on the floor beneath the table. May's camera, which had no audible shutter, flashed. The flash was lost in the ambient light. She had it. She had the picture. "And now," the MC said, his voice welling with manufactured feeling, "I would like to bring up the family that started it all. Evan, and the inspiration for this entire endeavor, Riley. Please come to the stage." A spotlight hit me in the kitchen doorway. I was blinded. I had nowhere to hide. My father, who had been lingering near the back wall, his face the color of wet cement, put a hand on my back. It was trembling. He steered me forward, toward the light. We stood on either side of Vivian. She put her arm around my waist. The gesture looked loving, protective. I felt her fingers dig into my hip bone, a silent, painful command. Smile. "This is true courage," the MC said, gesturing to me. "The living proof of what this foundation can do. Riley Ashbourne, an inspiration to us all." Vivian leaned in and took the microphone from him. "Thank you, Jim." She looked at me, her eyes shining with tears that were not real. Riley has been on such a journey." She turned to the audience. "We had a moment, not long ago, a very difficult one, a crisis of emotion." My blood went cold. "It is so hard, you know," she continued, her voice thick with pity. "To bear that kind of burden, it can make one unstable." She was doing it. She was deploying the emotional management agreement as a public weapon. She was preemptively painting me as unstable in front of the entire community, in front of the press. She was justifying the foundation's existence by citing the very crisis she had attempted to fabricate. "But we held her," Vivian said, her grip on my hip tightening. "We supported her, and we realized, if our own daughter was struggling this much, what about others? This foundation was born from that moment of crisis." I looked at my father. He was sweating heavily under the hot lights. His hand was shoved deep in his pocket, clenching and unclenching. A frantic, trapped movement. He was grinding his teeth, his smile a rictus of pure, agonizing terror. He caught my eye. It was not just an apology, it was a plea. "Do not do this. Do not make me choose." I just stared back at him. My face was calm. My expression was unreadable. I was not the one making him choose. As we stood there, trapped in the spotlight, I saw them, through the front door. Two figures entered silently, a man and a woman. They wore dark, conservative business suits. They were not guests. They were not caterers. They held clipboards. They stood at the very back of the room, their eyes scanning, landing on the donation table, then on the backdrop, then on Vivian. They were from Solara Audit. They were here. They did not move. They just watched, and they began to take notes. The MC, sensing the strange, frozen tension on the stage, quickly took the microphone back. "Let's have another round of applause for the brave Ashbourne family." As the applause began, we were ushered off the stage. I retreated immediately to my shadow in the kitchen. My father all but ran to the back porch, pushing through the door and disappearing into the night. "And now," the MC said, "the moment we are all here for. We open the floor for pledges. Who will be the first to help us heal this community?" I would like to say something. The voice was not amplified, but it cut through the room like a sheet of steel. The MC stopped, mid-sentence. The music faded. Every head in the room turned. Harlan Ashbourne was standing. He had removed his coat. He stood in a simple, perfectly tailored dark suit. He was no longer an anonymous old man. He was a pillar of absolute, undeniable authority. Vivian, who had been smiling by the podium, froze. Her smile cracked, then vanished. "Harlan, we were not expecting you to speak." "I am Harlan Ashbourne," he said, his voice projecting to the back wall, easily overpowering the microphone. A wave of whispers rolled through the room. "Ashbourne? Her husband's father? I thought he was gone. That's Harlan Ashbourne." The reporter from the Gazette was scribbling furiously, her eyes wide. "I am Harlan Ashbourne," he repeated. "And I have been away. I returned to Greyhaven to find my family had undertaken this noble project." He looked at Vivian, his eyes cold and devoid of any warmth. "Vivian, your speech was inspiring. You spoke of healing. You spoke of resilience." He then turned his gaze to the crowd, to the doctor and the assemblymen. "When I see a venture this passionate, I want to invest. When I see this level of commitment, I want to participate." He reached into his breast pocket. Vivian took a half step forward, her eyes wide, her mask of compassion slipping, replaced by the raw hunger of greed. She sensed a massive reputation-making donation. "But I am an old-fashioned man," Harlan said. "I believe that charity, like business, runs on one single, non-negotiable principle: absolute, ironclad transparency." He turned his gaze to the crowd. "Tonight, to inspire this wonderful community, I would like to kick off the next round of pledges, but I want to do it in a new way. I want to do it with a public demonstration of the very transparency this foundation is built on." He looked to the back of the room and nodded, almost imperceptibly, at the two agents from Solara Audit. They nodded back. He looked back at Vivian. Her face was as white as the lilies. "I propose," Harlan announced, his voice booming into the dead silent room, "that we conduct a public verification, right here, right now, to inspire this community and show them exactly where their hard-earned money is going. What do you say, Vivian?" The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the ice machine from the bar. Vivian stood frozen at the podium, her face a mask of polite confusion, but her eyes were darting between Harlan, the Solara auditors at the back, and the exit. She was calculating. Harlan did not give her time to think. He kept his gaze fixed on her. "A simple question to begin. Vivian," he said, his voice resonating with calm, absolute authority. "For the sake of our generous donors, who holds the authority to sign the checks for the foundation? Who, precisely, controls the outflow of funds?" Every guest, every donor, every politician turned to her. This was the first test. I do," Vivian said, forcing a small laugh. "Of course, as the founder and managing director, I handle the financial administration. It is a great deal of work, but it ensures efficiency." "Excellent," Harlan said, as if she had just passed a minor quiz. "Efficiency is vital. Now," he turned to the MC, who was still holding his microphone, his face slick with sweat. "Young man, you have been running the donation table. Please announce the official total of pledges received so far tonight, for the record." The MC swallowed, looking desperately at Vivian, who gave him a sharp, almost invisible nod. "Go on." "Right," the MC stammered. The total is, it is a wonderful night. We have raised $42,500. A thin, hesitant ripple of applause broke out, but it died instantly. The tension was too thick. Harlan nodded, then turned his gaze to the back of the room, to the woman in the dark suit. "Thank you. And now, I would like to welcome Ms. Jenkins from Solara Audit. Ms. Jenkins, you and your associate have been monitoring the intake desk since the doors opened at 6 p.m. What does your independent preliminary ledger show?" Ms. Jenkins took 2 steps forward. She was in her 40s, with a face that looked like it was carved from granite. She held her clipboard. "Our provisional tally," she announced, her voice crisp and devoid of emotion, "based on all verified checks and cash receipts processed at the donation desk, is $37,500. Silence. It was not a small discrepancy. It was exactly $5,000. I watched the reporter, Tara Lynn, her pen flying across her notepad. 42.5 versus 37.5. Vivian burst into a high, brittle laugh. "My goodness, Harlan, you have caught us in the middle of our accounting. This is simply a processing lag." She waved her hand dismissively at the guests. "Several large pledges, I am sure, just have not been entered into the system yet. It is just a clerical delay. There is no need to bore our guests with this." She turned to Harlan, her smile becoming a strained grimace. "Harlan, this is highly unorthodox. It is a party, not an interrogation. Perhaps we should stop this and continue with the celebration?" "I disagree," Harlan said, his voice like ice. "Transparency should be instantaneous. $5,000 is not a lag. Vivian, it is a hole, but perhaps the issue is not lag. Perhaps it is spillage." That was my cue. I stepped out of the kitchen shadows. My laptop was open in my hands. my thumb already on the trackpad. "Riley!" Vivian hissed, her eyes wide with fury. "Go back! You are not well. You are embarrassing yourself." I did not look at her. I walked directly to the large, 80-inch flat-screen television she had rented for the event. It was currently displaying the soft-focus image of her and me. I reached behind it and yanked the caterer's HDMI cord out. The screen went black. I plugged in my own. "Riley, I am warning you." My desktop appeared on the screen, visible to every person in the room. I clicked the file. Project Kestrel Full Disclosure. I opened the flowchart. The screen was filled with clean, cold, corporate-style graphics, a series of boxes and arrows, Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation, pledged donations, an arrow pointing to Cross Advisory Services, V, Cross, Sole Prop, a final arrow pointing to Vivian Cross Personal Investment Fund. "Vivian is not lying," I said. I picked up the MC's microphone from the podium he had abandoned. My voice, amplified, was steady and clear. "It is not a clerical lag. It is a programmatic transfer. She is just worried about the 35% administrative fee she wrote into the bylaws." A wave of murmurs swept the room. 35%? Dr. Finch said aloud, his face darkening. "The foundation is a mechanism," I said, pointing to the screen. "It is legally designed to allow her to skim 35 cents of every dollar you donate tonight, all under the label of governance costs. But even that is not fast enough. This chart shows the timeline of transactions from the Foundation's preliminary account, funds being withdrawn weekly and deposited directly into this private shell company. Cross Advisory, a company she owns, a company, I discovered, she has been funding for the last 6 months by stealing my rent money." "Vivian?" a new voice choked out. My father. He had come back from the porch, his face ashen. He was staring at the screen. "Vivian, what is Cross Advisory? What is this? I did not know about this." The crack, the sound of the entire family structure breaking in half. He was not looking at me with anger. He was looking at his wife with pure, unadulterated fear. He had been complicit in his own ignorance, and it had just been made public. "Evan, darling," Vivian said, rushing to him, trying to grab his arm. "This is a misunderstanding. Riley is confused. She is having one of her episodes. You know how she gets." "She said you were stealing her rent," he whispered, pulling his arm away from her. I did not know about any of this. I thought it was a household account. "I think I can clear up the $5,000 discrepancy." May Whitlock's voice was bright and cheerful, and it cut through the chaos like a bird call. May bustled forward, her camera held high. "Vivian, dear, you dropped this, or rather, you pocketed it." She was holding the thick white envelope from Marcus Thorne, the developer. "Mr. Thorne gave this to you right after your lovely speech," May said, smiling sweetly at him. "I took a picture of it, just as you slipped it into your handbag instead of the donation box. Such a generous man." May turned to the stony-faced auditor. "Ms. Jenkins, did you happen to log an envelope from Mr. Marcus Thorne in your $37,500 total?" "Ms." Jenkins consulted her ledger. "I did not. There is no pledge or receipt under that name on my log." Every eye in the room moved from May, to the envelope, to Vivian, to the designer handbag sitting on the floor under the donation table. The arithmetic was simple, brutal, and complete. Vivian was trapped. She was surrounded by my data. Harlan's logic, May's proof, and her husband's sudden, catastrophic failure of nerve, so she reverted to the only defense she had left. She turned, her face a mask of spitting rage, and pointed at me. "She is a liar!" Vivian shrieked, the polite, compassionate facade vanishing in an instant. "This is a setup. This is slander. You all know her. You know her struggles. She is mentally unwell. She is vindictive because I tried to get her help." She was echoing the words from her speech, but the context was now grotesque. "She is the one who cries all the time, who has crises of emotion. She is making this all up because she hates me. She is fabricating this entire pathetic fantasy. Is it a fantasy, Vivian? Harlan's voice was quiet, but it sliced through her hysteria. Is she lying about the crying? Harlan reached into his suit pocket. He pulled out a small, silver digital voice recorder. He held it up. This is a recording of a phone call you made from the kitchen 2 nights ago, he said, while I was sitting in the living room. He pressed play. Vivian's voice, not the shrieking, but the cold, calculating whisper I had heard from the basement, filled the room. No, this is a performance. It is about perception. We have to leverage the pity anchor. Riley's condition is the sympathy draw. We use the story about her crying, her crisis, to pull their heartstrings. It's the best way to get them to open their wallets. We just have to manage her until Saturday. Harlan pressed stop. The silence that followed was a physical thing. It was absolute. Dr. Finch, the hospital director, visibly stood up, closed his checkbook with a sharp snap, and placed it back in his jacket pocket. The assemblyman did not even bother being polite. He was already at the door, pushing his way out. Tara Lynn, the reporter, was holding her phone up, openly recording the entire scene, her face a mask of journalistic ecstasy. The guests were leaving, not in a panic, but in a quiet, unified wave of disgust, whispering pity anchor and 35% as they fled. The MC had backed himself into a corner, his face pale, as if he could make himself invisible by pressing against the drywall. Vivian's face was no longer pale. It was a deep, mottled red. The mask was not just cracked, it was pulverized. She was breathing in ragged, shallow gasps. She looked at me, at Harlan, at my father. She saw no allies. "Turn it off," she finally screamed, lunging for the microphone in my hand. "Turn off that microphone. This is a private residence. This is illegal. I will have you all arrested for trespassing. Get out. Get out of my house." I did not move. I did not flinch. I held the microphone steady. "It's over, Vivian," I said. The stage was no longer hers. The narrative was no longer hers. The house was no longer hers. The truth, backed by data, was the only thing left. The party was dead. The exit was a bottleneck of Greyhaven's finest. A frantic, silent stampede of doctors, politicians, and local business owners, all desperate to escape the blast radius of Vivian's social detonation. The only people who remained were the ones who were paid to be there. The shell-shocked catering staff, the 2 auditors from Solara, and Tara Lynn, the reporter from the Gazette. She was no longer just taking notes. She was holding her phone up, the red live icon glowing brightly in the dimming room. She was streaming. Vivian's shriek still hung in the air, a toxic echo. She was breathing in ragged, painful gasps. Her furious gaze locked on me. My father took a step, then another. He looked at the floor, at the fleeing guests, at the red light on the reporter's phone. His face was a mask of profound, sickening shame. "She is right," he whispered, his voice cracking. The room was quiet enough for the phone's microphone to catch it. He was talking to Tara Lynn. He was talking to the world. About my passivity. I let this happen." He looked at Harlan, then at me, his eyes overflowing. I let her handle the accounts, the investments. I gave her the passwords. I signed what she told me to sign. I thought it was just easier. I did not want to fight. I did not ask questions. He laughed, a short barking sound of self-loathing. I did not know about cross-advisory. I did not know she was taking Riley's rent. I was a coward. This is not just her. This is my fault, too. I was complicit. "Evan, shut up," Vivian hissed, her eyes darting to the phone. "You are making it worse. You are confused. You do not know what you are saying." "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but I still held the microphone. I turned to my father. He looked shattered, but he also looked, for the first time in my adult life, present. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer, I pulled out a single, folded sheet of paper. This was not for the show. This was the contingency I had prepared for him. "You are not confused, Dad," I said, holding the paper out to him. "You are just finally listening." He took it. His hand was trembling violently. "I am not a lawyer," I said, my voice steady for the camera, for the auditors. "But I am a compliance investigator. That is a printout of the Colorado State Banking Code, Section 11-105. It outlines the precise steps for a co-signatory to file an emergency suspension of access on all joint accounts in a case of suspected fraud. You are still her husband. You are still on the primary mortgage. You can call the bank's 24-hour fraud hotline and freeze her access. You can stop her from liquidating the accounts before the audit even begins. You are not powerless." Vivian's head snapped toward the paper. She recognized a new, immediate threat. "And I will handle the trust," Harlan said. Stepping forward, he was a mountain, separating Vivian from my father. He addressed Ms. Jenkins from Solara, his voice booming with authority. "As the primary grantor of the Ashbourne Living Trust," he announced, "I am hereby invoking Article 7, Section 4, the Integrity Clause. Based on the evidence presented tonight, I am declaring a material breach of fiduciary duty by the managing agent, Vivian Cross Ashbourne. As of this moment, all transfers from the primary trust are suspended. All subsidiary entities, including the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation, are frozen, pending a full forensic audit by your firm." If the public shame was a crack, that was the hammer blow, the money, the access. It was gone. Vivian's calculations shattered, the mask of the lawyer, the philanthropist, the victim. It all dissolved, leaving only the raw, cornered animal beneath. She lunged, not at Harlan, but at me. "You," she spat, her voice a low, venomous hiss that the microphone could barely catch. "You did this, you ungrateful, manipulative bitch." I did not flinch. I did not move. I just held her gaze. "I gave you a roof," she screamed, her voice breaking into a full-blown shriek. "I managed your pathetic existence. I paid for your doctors. I listened to you whine and cry for 5 years, you bottomless pit of need. I built a life for your useless, spineless father. You are nothing. You are a broken, hysterical financial drain. You have always been a burden." Tara Lynn, the reporter, took a brave step closer, her phone held high. This was the quote. This was the story. The compassionate founder was gone, replaced by this shrieking monster. "Ms. Cross," Tara called out, "are you denying the 35% administrative fee? Are you denying the existence of Cross Advisory?" "Get out!" Vivian screamed, clawing the air as she lunged for the reporter. "Get out of my house!" My father moved. It was the sharpest, most decisive action I had ever seen him take. He caught Vivian by the arms, restraining her. "Vivian, no! Stop it! Stop!" He was struggling to hold her, his face a grimace of pain and effort. He looked over her shoulder, his eyes finding mine in the chaos. Then, in a single, defining movement, he let go of her left arm and reached back, his hand blindly searching. He found my hand. He gripped it. He pulled me to his side. He stood there, in the wreckage of his home, holding back his hysterical wife with one arm and holding me, his daughter, with the other. He turned his body, shielding me, and faced the camera. He had made his choice. It was not a legal strategy. It was a personal, moral turning point. He was no longer a passive observer. He was anchoring himself to me. "This," he said, his voice shaking but resolute. "This ends. Now. I will cooperate, fully, with the audit, with everyone." Ms. Jenkins from Solara Audit stepped forward. She was immune to the drama. She was here for the facts. She held out a legal-sized envelope, not to Vivian, but to the stunned-looking head caterer, who was technically the event organizer on site. "This is a formal notice for preservation of evidence," Ms. Jenkins announced in a clear, authoritative voice. "All documents, digital and physical, related to the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation are to be secured immediately. This includes all donation logs, computers, phones, and hard drives used for this event. Any attempt to delete, alter, or destroy evidence will be referred to the Attorney General's office. The legal jargon seemed to break Vivian's hysteria. The fight vanished. She stopped struggling against my father. Her body went limp, then rigid. She ripped her arm from his grasp. She took a step back, her chest heaving. She smoothed the front of her emerald silk dress. She looked at the notice. She looked at the reporter. She looked at her husband holding my hand. The calculation returned. This was not the end of a fight. This was the beginning of a war. She turned her back on all of us. She walked calmly to the kitchen counter, past the wilting lilies. She retrieved her own handbag, the one without the stolen envelope, and pulled out her smartphone. She dialed a number. "Mark," she said, her voice a low, tight, professional monotone. "I have a situation, a serious one. I need you at the house, now. Bring the post-nup. Yes, that one." She was calling her lawyer. Harlan watched her, his face grim. He turned to my father. "Evan." My father looked at him, his face numb, still clutching my hand. "This house is no longer a home," Harlan said, his voice quiet but firm. "It is a legal minefield. It is a potential crime scene. Vivian is cornered. You cannot stay here tonight, either of you." He was protecting us. He was fulfilling his end of the bargain. He was extracting his son. My father nodded, a single jerky movement. "Riley," Harlan said, his gaze shifting to me. "Go to your room, get your medication, your laptop, and a change of clothes. Nothing else. Meet us at the car in 5 minutes." I did not pause. I did not look at Vivian again. I walked past the debris of the party, past the staring, silent catering staff. I stopped at the podium. I picked up the microphone one last time. I looked directly at Tara Lynn's phone. "My name is Riley Ashbourne," I said, my voice clear and amplified, filling the quiet room. This was not revenge. This was a compliance audit. This was about responsibility. When you see a lie that is built on the pain of people who cannot fight back, you have a moral obligation to expose it. The foundation was a lie, and tonight, we provided the facts. I set the microphone down. I went upstairs. We left as a new family, 3 of us. Harlan led the way. I was in the middle. My father, his face pale and drawn, was right behind me. We walked out the front door, into the cold, clean Colorado night. We left Vivian alone in the ruins of her party, surrounded by the melting ice sculptures, the smell of stale champagne, and the 2 auditors from Solara, who were already bagging the donation log as evidence. We got into Harlan's dark sedan, the doors shut, sealing us in. The engine turned over. The power axis of the Ashbourne family had not just shifted, it had been shattered and remade. Harlan drove past the house, his eyes scanning the street. "He is here," he said, nodding toward a black Mercedes sedan parked at the curb. "That is Mark Velasco's car, her lawyer. They are in the study." We did not go to a hotel, not yet. We had left my father at a diner 3 blocks away, a cup of coffee shaking in his hands. "They will be busy," Harlan said, his voice a low monotone. He parked half a block down, under the shadow of a large oak tree. "Lawyers like Velasco do 2 things in a crisis: bill hours and destroy paper. They will be running the shredder. They will be in the front office, not the basement." "We are going back in," I said. It was not a question. "We missed something," he said. We moved like ghosts. We did not use the front door. Harlan had a key to my father's workshop. We slipped through the side gate, the latch clicking with horrifying loudness in the night air. The house was mostly dark, but a single, bright light burned in the upstairs office window. Just as Harlan predicted, I could hear the faint, high-pitched whine of a heavy-duty paper shredder. We went straight to the basement, using the internal door from the workshop that bypassed the main house, back into the cold, familiar damp, back to the vault. Harlan entered the code, and the heavy steel door hissed open. The sterile light flickered on. Vivian thought this room was the prize, Harlan said. Walking past the filing cabinets that held the main trust, he went to a simple, gray metal locker in the back corner, one that looked like it held cleaning supplies. He opened it. Inside, there was a false back. He keyed in a separate, 5-digit code on a keypad I had never seen, and a deep compartment unlocked with a heavy thunk. He pulled out a slim, fireproof briefcase. This was not part of the main vault. It was a vault within the vault. He carried it to the small metal desk. I created this room for one purpose: to hold the truth. I just needed someone else strong enough to come in and read it. He opened the briefcase. It did not contain ledgers or financial statements. It contained two things: a stack of handwritten letters and a single, beautifully bound proposal. The proposal cover read, "The Ashbourne Trust for Dignity." "I never liquidated my assets," Harlan said, his voice laced with contempt for the word. "I restructured them. I moved them offshore, out of her reach, and solidified them into this, a new trust, one not based on blood, but on merit." His plan had been in place for a decade. The Dignity Trust was designed to fund innovative, independent chronic pain research and advocacy. It was a mirror image of Vivian's fake, pathetic foundation. Then he pushed a single, cream-colored envelope across the desk. My name was on it, in his sharp, black ink script. "I wrote this the day I left," he said. I opened it. The letter was dated 10 years ago, a week after he supposedly vanished. "Riley," it began, "you are being tested. The woman your father married is a predator who feeds on weakness. He has chosen to be weak. You do not have that luxury. She will come for your stability, your credibility, and your inheritance. She will use your pain as a weapon against you. You must learn to use it as a shield. I have established a new trust. I call it Dignity. If you are reading this, it means you have passed the test. It means you saw through the performance. It means you chose to gather facts while she was gathering allies. I needed to know if the pain had made you weak, or if it had made you precise. If you are precise, you will know what to do with this. Your name is listed not as a beneficiary, but as the inaugural chair of the Ethical Standards Committee. The trust is yours to protect." I stared at the words. Ethical Standards Committee. He had not just left me an inheritance, he had left me a job, a responsibility. The test was over. We locked the vault, locking the old life inside it. We slipped back out through the workshop, silent as shadows. The shredder was still whining upstairs. We picked up my father. He was sitting in the diner booth, his coffee cold. He looked 10 years older, and his hands would not stop shaking. Harlan drove us to a downtown hotel, a sterile, high-rise building of glass and steel. He secured a 2-bedroom suite on the 19th floor, paying in cash. This was our new war room. The moment the door locked, my father seemed to crumble. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "She called Riley a burden," he whispered, his voice cracking. "A financial drain. And I let her. I let her say it. I thought if I just stayed in the workshop, it would all be fine." "Evan," Harlan said, his voice not unkind, but firm. "This is the moment. You can either be her victim, or you can be Riley's father. You cannot be both." My father looked up. His eyes were red, but the weakness was gone, replaced by a cold, burning ember of shame. "You are right." He stood. He walked over to the desk where I was setting up my laptop. He took the folded paper I had given him, the banking code, and his cell phone. He dialed the bank's 24-hour fraud hotline. "My name is Evan Ashbourne," he said, his voice shaking but gaining strength. "I am calling to report unauthorized activity on all my joint accounts with Vivian Cross Ashbourne. I am invoking my right as co-owner to suspend all access. Immediately. Yes, I will hold." He was doing it. He was cutting the cord. While he was on hold, my own laptop pinged, then pinged again. The damage control was beginning. A new email had arrived in my Helen B. Vance inbox. the one I had used to pose as a donor. It was not from Vivian. It was from Dr. Finch, the hospital director, and it was a forward. "Dear friends and supporters," the forwarded email began. It was from Vivian. She had sent it to the entire salvaged guest list. "I am writing to you with a heavy heart. Tonight, you witnessed a terrible and manipulative family ambush. My stepdaughter, Riley, has struggled for years with significant mental and emotional health challenges. Tonight's unfortunate performance, fueled by a long-lost relative, was a complete fabrication, born of her well-documented instability. We are cooperating fully with our auditors to clear up this unfortunate, malicious slander. We pray for Riley's health and recovery." She was doubling down. She was not just claiming fraud. She was launching a public smear campaign against my sanity. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Riley Ashbourne." "Ms. Ashbourne, this is Alistair Graves at Solara Audit. We have a problem." My blood went cold. "What?" "No, a good problem. For you?" My team secured the Foundation's laptop before Ms. Cross's lawyer could seize it. We ran the invoice numbers for her media consulting vendor. They are sequential. They are also fraudulent. The PR firm she listed has no record of them. It is a ghost company. The invoices were created on her own machine. We have the timestamps. This is clean. Undeniable wire fraud. The Attorney General's office is going to love this." He hung up. My laptop pinged again. An email from the State Attorney General's office. The Plan B address I had prepared. "Ms. Ashbourne, we have received your preliminary file, the report from Solara Audit, and have reviewed the public live stream of the event. An emergency. Public audit hearing has been scheduled. 10 a.m. tomorrow at the registered headquarters of the Foundation." "The headquarters," I said aloud. "They mean the house." "No," Harlan said, pointing to the dignity proposal. She moved the registration. She rented a small conference hall downtown to look more official. The meeting is there. It is public. 10 hours. I sat down and began to type. I took the new evidence from Solara. I took the audio file of the pity anchor phone call. I took May's time-stamped photos of the envelopes. I took my bank statements. I took Harlan's letter. I began to assemble the final, factual narrative. My father finished his call. He walked over. He placed his truck keys on the desk next to me. Then he took out his wallet and removed his private, non-joint ATM card. He placed it on top of the keys. "She cannot touch this," he said, his voice raw. "This is mine, from the workshop. It is not much, but it is clean. You are in charge of it now." It was the most profound act of trust and surrender I had ever seen. He was severing his last link to her and handing his independence to me. I continued to type. The pain in my body was a screaming inferno. The stress, the lack of sleep, the adrenaline. It was a 9 out of 10. I closed my eyes for a moment, my hands curling into fists. "Breathe, Riley," Harlan said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Do not let the pain decide your voice. It wants you to be angry. It wants you to use her words. Bitch, liar, thief. Do not—" He tapped my laptop screen. "Let the facts do it. The timeline, the numbers, the invoices. Be the auditor, not the victim. Be the investigator. That is the voice they cannot refute." I took a deep breath. He was right. I looked at the email Vivian had sent, the one calling me unstable, emotional, sensitive. I almost smiled. She was right. I was sensitive. I was sensitive to lies. I was sensitive to behavioral patterns. I was sensitive to the subtle, fractional discrepancies that mark the beginning of fraud. She saw sensitivity as a weakness. I had just proven it was a weapon. It was a signal reading device, and it was pointed right at her. The hotel clock clicked. 12 a.m., midnight. I hit save on the final report. I titled it, "Full Factual Deposition for the State Attorney General." I emailed it to the prosecutor. "It is done," I said. My father was asleep in the chair, the first real sleep he'd had in a decade. Harlan was watching the city lights, a sentinel. The stage was set, 10 hours. The conference room was offensively beige. It was a rented space in a downtown office park, the official headquarters of the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. It smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. This was not a theater. It was an execution chamber. We sat on one side of a long, laminated table. Me, my father, and Harlan. My father was wearing his best suit, looking exhausted but resolute. On the other side sat Vivian and her lawyer, Mark Velasco. Vivian was pale, her makeup applied like armor, her eyes fixed on her lawyer, refusing to look at us. At the head of the table sat Ms. Jenkins, from Solara Audit, and a man in a rumpled suit who introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, from the State Attorney General's office, in the back. Tara Lynn sat with her laptop open, and beside her, May Whitlock, looking like a sweet grandmother attending a zoning board meeting. Harrison nodded to Ms. Jenkins. She stood, her voice as flat and dry as the room's air. We conducted an emergency overnight review of the Foundation's laptop, seized at 6 p.m. yesterday. We found irregularities. She put a spreadsheet up on the projector. We identified 18 separate administrative or consulting expenditures, totaling over $63,000, paid out over the last 4 months. These payments exceed the Foundation's own 35% cap, as stipulated in the bylaws, by nearly 40%. Furthermore, she continued, 6 of those payments, totaling exactly $30,000, were routed not to a media firm, but to the Cross Advisory shell account owned solely by Ms. Cross. Mark Velasco stood up, smoothing his tie. He had that easy, expensive smile. Mr. Harrison, Ms. Jenkins, this is clearly a case of aggressive, disorganized bookkeeping by an inexperienced, first-time Foundation director, simple accounting errors, he gestured toward Vivian, painting her as a naive victim. Ms. Cross is devastated by these oversights. We are prepared to make restitution for any clerical errors. We request this matter be moved to private mediation to resolve these minor discrepancies quietly. Mr. Harrison did not even look at him. He looked at his own file. Mr. Velasco, accounting errors are not usually routed to personal investment accounts, and disorganized bookkeeping is not a legal defense for wire fraud. He turned to Vivian. As of 10 a.m. this morning, the state has opened a formal investigation into the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. All related assets, bank accounts, and properties are hereby frozen, pending a full forensic audit. Harrison looked at my father. Mr. Ashbourne, your name is listed as a co-founder on the incorporation papers. Were you aware of these transfers? Did you authorize your wife to exceed the 35% limit or to transfer funds to Cross Advisory? My father sat up straight. He looked, for the first time, at his wife. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room. No, I was not aware. I saw the presentation for the first time last night, with everyone else. I never authorized those withdrawals. I was never consulted. I gave her my trust, and she abused it. This is not about accounting, Harlan's voice boomed from the end of the table. It is about fitness, moral and financial. He slid a heavy sealed manila envelope onto the center of the table. This is a supplementary addendum to the Ashbourne Living Trust, filed with my attorneys 10 years ago. And this is? Harrison asked. It is the future, Harlan said. It details the creation of a new, parallel entity, the Ashbourne Trust for Dignity, and it names the sole individual empowered to act as its ethical guardian and moral arbiter. He tapped the envelope. It names Riley Ashbourne. Vivian let out a sound. It was not a laugh. It was a bark of dry, desperate air. This is ridiculous. Mark, stop this. She turned to Harrison, her eyes wide with manufactured pity. Mr. Harrison, you cannot possibly take this seriously. This man, my father-in-law, he is not well. He vanished for 10 years. He is not mentally competent. He is not lucid. This is elder abuse. He is being manipulated by her. She pointed at me. To destroy this family. Harlan smiled. It was the first time I had seen him truly smile. It was terrifying. That is an excellent point. Vivian, competency is everything. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a second, thinner document. Which is why, 2 days ago, I had a full neurological and competency evaluation conducted by Dr. Alistair Finch, the head of the Greyhaven Hospital Board, the man you invited to your party. He slid the report across the table to Harrison. He finds me, and I quote, possessing a sharp and lucid mind, sound judgment, and full capacity to manage my own affairs. The room was silent. Vivian's face was chalk. And then, Mr. Harrison's laptop pinged. He looked down, read the screen, and his eyebrows shot up. Well, he said, this is new. We just received an email, sent to my office, to Miss Lynn at the Gazette, and to Miss Vivian Cross. It is from a Kendra Marks PR Solutions. Vivian's head snapped up. It is a public apology, Harrison said. Reading. Ms. Marks states she was the freelancer hired by Ms. Cross. She is formally rescinding her invoices, claiming she was misled, and she has attached her entire email correspondence with Ms. Cross. He looked directly at Vivian, including the directives on how to leverage the pity anchor of Ms. Ashbourne's emotional crisis to solicit donations. I might have something, too. May Whitlock piped up from the back row, her voice cheerful. She stood up, holding a small black SD card. I am the neighbor. My doorbell camera catches the front porch. I have been saving the footage for months. Vivian got so many special deliveries. She walked up and handed the card to Harrison. This is the footage, sir, from the last 6 months. It shows Ms. Cross receiving at least 12 different cash envelopes from contractors and developers, none of whom, I checked, were on the donor list last night. I thought you might want to see who else was paying her advisory fees. That was the final blow. The invoices were fraudulent. The cash trail was documented. Vivian's lawyer, Mark Velasco, quietly closed his alligator skin briefcase. He did not say a word. He just sat back, his face blank. He was done. Vivian just collapsed. The armor, the calculation, the rage, it all evaporated. She slumped in her chair, a hollowed-out version of the woman she was. She looked at my father, her eyes finally, truly pleading. Evan, she whispered. Evan, please, think of the family. Think of our honor. Do not let them do this. We can fix this, quietly. I looked at her. Honor, I said, my voice quiet, is not something you can buy in an envelope. Vivian, and it is not something you can shred in an office. My father stood up. He did not look at her. He looked at Mr. Harrison. Sir, I have already suspended her access to our personal accounts, but I want to sever her from the business. A man from Greyhaven Trust, whom Harlan had apparently called, stepped forward with a form. I need to terminate her signatory authority, permanently. The bank rep put the form on the table. My father picked up a pen. The scratch of the pen on the paper was the only sound. He signed his name, Evan Ashbourne. He pushed the paper to the bank rep. It was done. Harlan Ashbourne stood up. He was the only one standing. He was in complete command. Mr. Harrison, we agree to the dissolution of the Cross Ashbourne Care Foundation. We will cooperate fully. We recommend all frozen assets be used to make full restitution, first to the donors, and second to Ms. Riley Ashbourne for the funds stolen from her. And second, he said, tapping the sealed envelope for the Dignity Trust. We are activating this. The Ashbourne Trust for Dignity will be the successor entity. It will be funded by my personal estate. Its mission will be to serve the very community Ms. Cross preyed upon. Per this legal directive, my granddaughter, Riley Ashbourne, will assume full control as chair. My son, Evan Ashbourne, will serve as her senior advisor. He looked at Vivian. His voice was cold. You are removed. From everything. We recommend the state pursue all available legal consequences. Harlan turned from the table and looked at the back row, at Tara Lynn, at May. He was speaking to the public record. What happened here was not a family squabble. It was a failure of oversight. The foundation, Ms. Cross-built, was a slap in the face to every person living with real, invisible pain. This, he said, tapping the dignity proposal, is our promise to that community. The Ashbourne name will no longer be associated with pity. It will be associated with dignity. I felt the tension leave my body, a rush of exhaustion and relief so profound my legs trembled. My father turned to me. He did not say anything. He just opened his arms. I stepped into them. I felt his arms wrap around me, strong and certain, and I buried my face in his suit jacket. In the sterile beige conference room, a few people began to clap. Vivian sat alone. Her lawyer, Mark Velasco, stood up, gathered his briefcase, and walked out of the room without looking back. He was not her lawyer anymore. Vivian stood, her movements stiff. She picked up her handbag. She did not look at us. She walked, head held high, out of the conference room. Tara Lynn and her camera followed her all the way down the hall, the flash of the camera illuminating her retreat. The Klieg lights of the performance had followed her, but now they were exposing her. The truth was now the public record. I walked out of the office park into the bright, cold, noon sun. My father and my grandfather were on either side of me. The pain was still there. It hummed in my hips, a low, familiar static. It would always be there, but my voice, the one she had tried to silence, the one she had labeled hysterical, was finally, perfectly clear. I thought of the basement, the place I had hidden, the place where I had documented my pain in the dark. It was not a hiding place anymore. It was just an archive, a storage room for truths that had finally and permanently been brought into the light. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so curious. Where are you all listening from today? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.